Testing. Testing. 1, 2.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody doing great? Blessed, Tony says. Rain, everything that comes with Florida weather, right? How many of you are excited about the primaries coming up? Yeah, come on. How many of you are excited about the day after the primary coming up? This has been quite a ride, hasn't it? Quite a ride this primary season. It's great to see a lot of excellent candidates out there, and just to see Polk County active in all the races and so forth. And as you know, the state representative District 50 race is a universal election this year in the primary. And you're probably saying, well, what's that mean, right? Well, it means no Democrats are running, no MPAs are running. It's just our two Republican candidates, and it's a winner-take-all election at the primary. It's the general election, kind of like the school board races are on August the 23rd. Those are our general elections for school boards as well. And I anticipate there's going to be a lot of people that get out there and vote August 23rd. And if you don't, don't be complaining the next day if your candidate loses, okay? You got to get out there. A few announcements I want to make, recognize some people here first. Paul Hatfield, Vice President of our faith-based Republican Club, right back here. Judy Hatfield, our treasurer, right back here in the corner. Don Templin, right up here front, our secretary. And yours truly as president. Well, I tell you, it's an important election. Such an important election, isn't it? Such an important election coming up. And I certainly will be ready for that break afterwards. You know what I mean. Certainly be ready for the break. A few things I want to mention to you before we get to the forum. The next Tuesday night, August the 9th, I believe, you can look on Facebook, whatever, but Congressional District 15 will be having a forum debate over in Plant City for the congressional candidates for CD 15. And I want to mention that because I'm the CD 15 caucus chair for that, and that'll be the last time you'll be able to pretty much see those candidates at a forum and debate situation. On August the 20th, on a Saturday, at Lakeland headquarters on Edgewood Drive, the headquarters for the Polk GOP, we'll be having our last rally for before the primary election, and we're going to be starting that from 9 until about 1 o'clock. And for goodness sakes, bring your signs, wave the signs, okay? Let's show the liberal crazies that we know how to do it and be crazy too, okay? By waving our signs and flags and everything, okay? That's 9 a.m., 1 p.m. on August the 20th, Edgewood Drive. Come out, have fun. Candidates, set up tables. If you need to, bring your yard signs to pass out and so forth on August the 20th. I don't believe there's anything else that I need to announce. Am I forgetting anything, Paul?
We'll have t-shirts available right after the meeting.
What's that?
We have some t-shirts available right after the meeting. Club t-shirts.
Okay.
And if they want to order anything, we'll take the orders also.
Okay. Now, before we get to the forum, our main event, I was trying to get John Friedt to play some WWE music, but I don't think we're going to get that, okay? Are there any candidates other than the state race, state rep 50 in here tonight? Okay, right over here. Just your name and what seat you're running for.
Hi, good evening. Jennifer Rabin, running for U.S. Congress, District 18.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone else? Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Paul Hatfield, come on, get up here. I know you're running for something. You're always running from something.
Try not to run too far from something. Paul Hatfield, going for Florida House District 68, which is actually eastern Hillsborough from County Line Road west. Takes in Brandon, north of the Alphi River, all the way up Brandon and Plant City area.
Okay, thank you very much. And before I turn it over to John Friedt, who's going to be our moderator this evening, you know, I've been a candidate before, and I got to thank the families that are involved with the candidates because it's not easy. And Jennifer, your family, your supporters, thank you very much for all you do, all the time you put in. volunteer-wise and so forth. It's a lot of hard work, dedication. Philip, same with you and your family. A lot of hard work and dedication. Really appreciate you taking an interest in District 50. So thank you to both of you. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to, let me introduce the candidates. I want to do that. Oh, that's right. The most important thing to do. Paul Hatfield, would you lead us in invocation?
Sure. Matthew chapter 5, real quickly, if I may. Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, tells us, in fact, that we need to be salt and light of the earth. Salt preserves, and salt flavors also. If we lose our flavoring, you cooks that cook with salt, a little dash here, because a little dash does it. But if we, in fact, lose our savor, we're of no benefit. At the same time, salt preserves, and we need to, in fact, fight the bacteria and fight the bad stuff. And light, we need to, in fact, shine the light in the dark places. If this room were dark and I had a flashlight, everybody would be looking at the flashlight. We need to attract people to us as Christ would and shine his light, his love, his salvation, so that people want to seek out. That's what we're supposed to do. That's a commandment. So I want to challenge us to do that. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. I pray, Lord, that you help us to open our hearts and minds, be with each of the candidates, be with Jennifer and Philip, dear Father. I pray that you would, in fact, help clear their minds, help them to, in fact, think clearly on their responses and their answers and discussion. And, dear Father, help us to, in fact, look to them. And, Lord, I pray that each in the group, I pray that it's a time that's of good fellowship, a time that, in fact, that we'll remember, a time, in fact, dear Father, that you will be lifted up, a time that we will be walking away and say, that was really cool. That, in fact, God was praised and God was lifted up. And I have a better feeling about my understanding. And I pray, Lord, that you would, in fact, work throughout all of our elections that are going on. Yes, right here in Polk County. Yes, the stuff that's going on, all the candidates and things and their work and their efforts and their supporters. Wow, I know a little bit about that, Lord. I pray that you would sustain them, carry them through. And I pray that those that, in fact, would like to support, that they get out there with their lawn chairs and their prayer knees and do just that. Because these candidates need their hands, they need their feet, and need their billfolds. And I pray, Lord, that you would encourage each of them to do that. Thank you again for this time. Thank you, dear Lord, that we can look to you and call upon you and cast all of our cares upon you because you first cared for us. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Okay, let's go ahead and do the pledge. And let me see. Levi Stovall, come up here. Let's go ahead and lead us in the pledge tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, before I turn it over to John, you can go ahead and be seated. I want to add one rule to tonight, John. If a candidate should mention the other candidates by name, that other candidate gets to respond. Okay? Let's do that. John, it's all yours.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm glad you're here tonight. My name is John Friedt. I'm the pastor here at Believers Fellowship Church. It's our honor to host this event for the faith-based West Polk County Republican Club. Something like that. It's up there on the screen. Faith-based Republican Club of West Polk County. So anyway, it's our honor to host. It's my honor to be the moderator today in the forum/debate. The debate part might be a little bit soft. I will say this, as a pastor, your pastor may not do this, but this pastor does. I fill out a ballot every year, and I simply say, this is how I would vote if this were my ballot. You can vote any way you want to, because I voted how I wanted to, but this is my ballot. The old school way was, keep it quiet, don't tell anybody who you voted for. Well, I just kind of want to ask why. If you're not confident and proud in who you voted for, why did you vote for them? But anyway, I have a question mark under this race. In one sense, it makes me very happy to say that I can put a question mark there because we have two very good qualified candidates to run for that office. And both of you are conservative Republican people. I am delighted to know that there is not a contender at all from any other party. I think that's fantastic. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It is my hope that we drive every demon out of this nation. And you can put in there what you think, I mean. So, this is a Republican club meeting, so I think it's okay to say that. Folks, you're not here to hear from me. You are here to hear from two very wonderful people. Would you please put your hands together and welcome up here to the front, Mr. Philip Walker and Miss Jennifer Kennedy. I am going to switch mics. Mr. Walker, there is a microphone for you. Miss Kennedy, microphone for you. And then I'm going to have a seat. And actually, before I sit down, I'll just explain how this will work tonight. In just a moment, I'll give each of the candidates about 3 minutes or so to introduce themselves. Then we'll go through a series of questions, depending on certain answers or certain introductions that you might give might dictate which questions that I've already prepared to give tonight. And then if time prevails, and I think it will, we'll open up the floor, give opportunity for the crowd here to ask some questions, gives you a chance to ask some very specific things if you would like. There's 50 people in the room or so that would have some thoughts that a couple of us that put some questions together just might not have thought of. So we would be delighted to hear from you, and I think each candidate would be delighted to hear from you also. After that, we'll go back to both candidates, give you a chance to make some closing statements, and then we'll go home, hopefully, having a decision made as to who we will vote for. All right, everybody ready? Yes, sir. No? Okay. All right, does anybody have a coin? Pick a number between 1 and 22.
22.
The number was 14. Which is closer? That makes you 7 away. That makes you 8 away, I think, right? Okay. So first question going to Mr. Philip Walker. Actually, not a question. 3 minutes to introduce yourself, please, sir.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come and share this evening, and thank you to the Corsa Club, Mr. Shoemaker as the chair, and Pastor, of course, for you hosting here in your facility. My name is Philip Walker. I'm father, husband. My wife is here with me tonight. Thank God she can be with me tonight. She's just getting back from being with her mother down south, who just turned 90, and helping her sisters with her mother's situation, dealing with dementia. So I was glad to have her with me tonight. Sweetheart wave, so they know that I am married. But again, as I said, husband, father, grandfather, former business owner, still a business owner in some respect. I owned the Allstate Insurance Agency for about 26, going on 27 years here in North Lakeland, the Allstate Insurance Agency. Sold that agency about 4.5, 5 years ago. Also, still having business with rental properties that my wife and I have ownership of. Also a former law enforcement person. I was in Lakeland Police Department coming out of college, doing my undergraduate work. I became a Lakeland police officer for a few years. And of course, after that, I became the owner again of Allstate Insurance Agency. I'm also associate pastor at my church, Christ Community Christian Center Church, which is in West Lakeland, right near McKeel School of Technology. We call it the Big McKeel School. And also serving on many boards and committees throughout the state, here locally as well. And those are the kind of things I would say who I am. Of course, as you do know too, I'm serving in my capacity as City Commissioner for the City of Lakeland now going about ending up my 13th year. And that's why I decided to choose to do what I have done as far as running for this particular seat, or vying for this particular seat, House Seat 50, because I'm about to term out here in about a few months. And I decided, well, hey, that particular person in that seat is termed out. Why not? So I made a jump, and a leap, I would call it, to do just that and make sure I can serve the citizens that I've served for these number of years, giving up my time, my talent, resources to make sure that we can keep Lakeland what we want it to be in this particular growing environment that we have here in Lakeland. And we'll make sure that all of us can live here, work here, play here to keep Lakeland what we want it to be. Again, Philip Walker, running for State House, House Seat 50, and we ask for your vote when time comes if you haven't already done it. Thank you so very much.
My name is Jennifer Kennedy, and I am running to push back the darkness. We are living in a time when the world is full of things that I'm not sure, even in my lifetime, I would have thought we would have seen. When Biden was elected, and we started to see things happen in our country that are unconscionable, I decided that I had to stand up. I had to stand up. I'm a teacher. I love my work. I teach children to love to learn and to love Jesus. I teach in a Christian school. And I am passionate about that work. But I am even more passionate about making sure that they have a country that they can thrive in, that we have a state that we can be proud of, that we can stand up and support our governor who needs people standing to his right and to his left, who will be strong and courageous and do what needs to be done. And that is why I am running. So I was born in Lakeland. My family had a business, a veterinary hospital, and I grew up working hard. My dad was a farm boy, and he taught my three brothers and me to look around us and figure out what we could do to help. And I grew up doing a lot of very hard, physical, dirty work, because that's what you do when you own a business. And so I cleaned cages and I mopped floors and I answered phones and I did what needed to be done. And I learned that small business is the heart of our community, and every single policy that we have in place needs to make sure that we support and defend the rights of people to live freely in our country and thrive both economically and have the opportunity to build strong families. And that's what it's all about. I graduated from Kathleen High School. I went to Florida State. I have a master's from the University of South Florida, but none of that really matters. What matters is that I am a fighter. And I look forward to the opportunity to serve our community in Tallahassee and push back the darkness. Thank you.
One of the questions that I was going to start with is, what is your history in the District 50 area? I think you both have explained at least a portion of that. And so we'll skip past that, but I want to ask, and we'll go over to Philip Walker first on this, please. How active, or if I can even use the word, how aggressive would you be in initiating legislation, and what areas would be your priorities?
You know, we've been asked that kind of question through all of our questionnaires pretty much that we've been given as candidates. I'm sure Ms. Jennifer would agree. What were our top three priorities, those kind of things. Well, here in the city of Lakeland, as a city commissioner, as I've just shared and serving here, I would tell you that affordable housing is one of my main priorities, to make sure that we have places for, I call the gainfully employed, the working employed to have a meaningful place to live. I find that because of what costs we've seen happened here in our community for housing has escalated. And of course, being, as I just shared with you in my introduction, being an owner of rental properties, as my wife and I do have and manage, we try to make sure that our rents are below pretty much what the market rate is, so folk who need to have a place to stay and a nice place, comfortable place to live, can afford it. So that'd be one of my things. But of course, even with that, as I was part of the transition team with former Governor Rick Scott, who's Senator Scott now, when he became governor, I was part of the transition team to help him because, I guess, get up to snuff, as we call it, before he became governor. And I was working in the insurance part of it. So I wanted to make sure that I could do that as well to support the property situations that we're dealing with, the property insurance piece here in our state. As we've seen several companies that have left the state, and hopefully because of that and become your next state representative, I'll be able to work on a committee to just support what we can do to get those property rates down. They have escalated. You have companies who left. I've been affected by it and had to have fine now going to, we call the insurance of government to have the support with the citizens. Government has no business being an insurance business. That's not what we do. So I want to make sure that I can do that. So that'll be one of my top priorities, again, affordable housing, working with property insurance, hopefully to be supportive and getting those property rates down as they should be, and hopefully support where it could be a win-win situation where companies will want to stay in our state versus leaving as they are now.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kennedy, same question. How active or even aggressive would you be in initiating legislation, and what areas would be your priorities?
I think sometimes we think about issues in silos, as isolated pieces, when really it's more like a Venn diagram and they layer one on top of the other. There are a couple of things that I'm passionate about, and the first is religious liberty. It is absolutely essential in our state, in our country, that we have the right as Christians to operate authentically as Christians. I mentioned that I teach in a Christian school. It's very important that those of us who serve in ministry in Christian schools have the ability to continue to do that. And, you know, I think sometimes we take our governor for granted. We don't remember. Can you imagine what the last few years would have been like under Governor Gillum? And in a moment, our world could be very, very different. And the thing that protects us is an emphasis on protecting religious liberty. And that includes focusing on things like life and protecting unborn babies. That is our ability to operate our churches and our schools. That is our fundamental freedom as people of faith. And then the other thing that encompasses a lot, and it includes, as my friend Mr. Walker said, affordable housing, but it is the thriving of families. We need strong families in order to have strong communities. And it is not just any one thing. It is also economic opportunity. It is creating an environment where business has the freedom to thrive. It is creating a workforce. You know, I work primarily with students who are passionate about STEM. So I teach robotics, I teach research. I have built a program in a Christian school that allows kids to explore these things. And we need to make sure that every child in our community has an opportunity for a great education and a good job. I am I feel very strongly about opening up opportunities in the trades in particular. I do not believe that every child needs to go to college. I don't think it's good for every child to go to college. I think that there are other opportunities that create an even brighter future. And so religious liberty and the thriving of families.
Thank you very much. You actually segued right over into my next question, and it's not a problem. You took about a minute longer than Mr. Walker did, but you answered the next question quite well in your statement of the previous question. So, Mr. Walker, if you would, in 60 seconds, please answer this question. What role does your faith play in influencing what you would fight for the citizens of Florida?
Well, as a born-again believer, I would tell you that I would do three things that I continue to say as I became a Christian in some earlier years of my life, and am now serving as associate pastor at my church locally here in the Lakeland community. If it's not unethical, if it's not immoral, and if it's not illegal, then you will not have a problem with Philip. But if anything that will touch any of those particular streams, unethical, immoral, or illegal, then I have a problem with it. And that's because I have a God-given right to make sure that, first of all, who gave me the right to be able to have life, but not only have life, but have life more abundantly. And as he died on Calvary's cross for me and for you, then I got to make sure in my teaching and what I do that it's shared to all those that I see and talk and walk with.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Kennedy, you touched on this a moment ago. What have you done already in life, public life, concerning the sanctity of life for the unborn and for the elderly?
I'm so glad that you included the elderly in that as well, because I think that the whole continuum from the very beginning to the very end is significant. I've been involved in pro-life ministry for more than 25 years. My husband was a member of Congress right at the very beginning of the Susan B. Anthony list. And so from those earliest days, it was a privilege to be a part of the very beginning of that ministry that has been so effective, helping to elect pro-life members to Congress and now to state legislatures as well. I have been a financial supporter. I've been a passionate advocate for organizations including CareNet, which is a nationwide crisis pregnancy ministry and network of crisis pregnancy ministries, and have been in the trenches for a quarter of a century on these issues, and have had the privilege of walking alongside some of the heroes. One of the greatest privileges of my life was calling Henry Hyde a friend. You may be familiar with the Hyde Amendment, which has been in the news a lot lately. Henry Hyde was a warrior and a champion for life in the U.S. House. In terms of service to the elderly, for many years, I run an urban farm in Lakeland in addition to the school, and we have raised food and shared it for many years with low-income seniors. We are committed to making sure that the children that I work with value life from cradle to grave. And so I thank you for your emphasis on both areas of that, because that's very significant.
Mr. Walker, same question. What have you done? Now, you've had some public office life, so what have you done as a private citizen as well as in public office, adding that question, part of the question for you, concerning the sanctity of life for the unborn and the elderly?
As far as the sanctity of life of the unborn, I've been very active through my local church, our local ministry, as we have been with both organizations that we have here, in our city. And I know if I name them, you would know who they are. But certainly, but one, I know a particular one that we have several of our ladies from our women's ministry in our church who work along with the Woman's Choice organization, and our church supports that through finance and funding sources. But as you all know, and if you don't know, I think it should be shared, you find that among the African American race, the highest numbers of abortions. So we do what we can as a ministry, especially in the heartbeat of the African American community, along with other African American churches, and I hate using African American churches or black church because it sends such a divide to me in my mind. We're all one, but some things happen and always keep us divided, and I think it's a trick of the enemy. No, I don't think it is. It is a trick of the enemy. He wants to keep us divided. He don't want us to be on one accord. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He don't care about what happens. He just wants that to happen. And we use the church as somewhat has been, I think, a point of reference where it has happened. Because we're always saying, the black church, the white church. And we've had situations in our own church where we've had white families who come and they get scolded from their own. Why are you going over there to this black church with this senior black pastor? That's nonsense. Where's the love of God, the love of Christ that we should be sharing? And we see it all in our politics too. I have friends, I'm getting off beat here, so keep me back on back in the straight and narrow. But I have friends who don't even speak to me because I have an R behind my name. We grew up together. And on the other hand, there's some that have the D behind their name, and vice versa. This is nonsense. I chose to be a Republican because of what I believe Republican values are all about. You chose to be over there because it's what you wanted to be. Okay? Well, don't get mad with me. Still love me and have the love of Christ that we all should share. Now back to that point, the reference. Sure, pro-life is, I've always been and will continue to be, to stand for that, the sanctity of the unborn child. We do it again through our ministry. I do it on an individual basis, supporting it as well as I've done, both entities as I just mentioned here in our community. And also, when it comes to seniors, we just recently started some years back, and I'm thinking back, and as you were asking that question, and Ms. Jennifer was answering the question, I think it might have been about 10 years, 18 years ago, we started a resource center here in Lakeland called Age Friendly Lakeland, where it's for seniors. They have the opportunity to call this place or go by the place at Keller Rec here in our city, south of the town, and they can all kind of referral sources, information they can find out about what they need for their own livelihood to be able to continue life good as an aging person in place. I'm there almost. So I want to age good and age well, and I know with the Lord Jesus Christ in my life, He will make sure that I have everything I need because He's my source. And I look to Him, nobody else. And that's what I think is important. So thank you.
I want to shift gears and ask some issue-based questions that are often very important to Republicans. So far, the questions have been as well, but they've been based on some ideas of faith and freedom and those types of things. But considering liberties and the freedoms that we have in this nation, I'll ask this question first to Mrs. Kennedy. What is your view of the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, including concealed carry, high-capacity magazines, and high-power rifles such as AR-15s?
I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that the Second Amendment is one of the most important protections that we have as a society. I am a concealed carry permit holder. I obviously believe in the right of people to bear arms. I believe that people have the right to bear arms that other people don't like. I believe that as we think about how we manage the challenges of firearms, it is the mental health of those who carry them that ought to be our primary concern. The weapons themselves do not harm anyone. It is those who use them that we need to be very mindful of. And I am, I'm a teacher. And every year I do active shooter training. Actually, I'll do it tomorrow. And I know exactly how to walk into a room and find the deep corner. These are the things that I instinctively do as a longtime educator. And so I am not immune to the concerns that those of us who deal with children every day have about these things. But it doesn't change what the Second Amendment says. And so I feel strongly and am supportive of the freedoms that the Second Amendment gives us related to firearms.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, same question. Let me detail the three things there that are brought out in the question. Concealed carry, high-capacity magazines, and also high-power rifles such as AR-15s. What are your views of those things concerning the Second Amendment?
I, too, do believe in the Second Amendment, the right to carry. And I was trying to think, as Ms. Jennifer was sharing, what difference would there be? And as I think, because I have a concealed weapon carry permit, we have had active shooting training in our local church. Unfortunately, we had a situation here a few years back, just a few years ago, down the street from where our church is located near McKill School of Technology, as I just shared, where a local, here I go again, black church pastor, someone walked off the street. William Boss is the name of this pastor, and some of you may know him, and walked off the street, shot him and another member of the church as they were preparing for the main worship service. That's crazy. But of course, as Ms. Jennifer just mentioned, it's a mental illness aspect that people deal with. It's not the weapon that you carry. It's permitted, as we're permitted to do, to have bear arms. And that's what I want to make sure that we all have the right to do, because it's given to us in the Constitution. I got one. Many of you probably have one. But now when it comes to the others as well, I believe it's important to make sure we can be able to use those weapons in the right kind of a way, especially so also. That's where I would stand.
Thank you very much. All right. Recently in Polk County, we had, and actually it's still kind of going on, a lot of issues in our school system. Many people I recognize here have been engaged in appealing to our school boards concerning a few issues. I want to ask a question concerning your knowledge of particular reading material that was recently found in Polk County Public Schools, the efforts that were taken to remove those books from the libraries, and your involvement or lack of involvement in that specific issue here locally. Mr. Walker, we'll go to you first.
I would share with you that I was appalled by certain reading material that our young children would be able to put their hands on and be able to see and read. And I was in hope of making sure, as I understand that the school board candidates are having their deliberation, and of course time will tell, but certainly want to make sure that what is provided to our children is material that would not adversely affect them overall. Any kind of material. It's unfortunate, again, where we live in a fallen world, and I'm sure all of you who are born again believers understand that. So the devices that come to try to sneak in and break in and cause situations to be disruptive, that's what we got to keep our eyes on and make sure. Now, have I actually been involved in the process? I have not. I've been too busy campaigning for my own seat. So I hope you can appreciate that comment. But certainly would not want to have any material that would be offensive, especially some of the things that we have saw and have seen that would be offensive for a child to have to get their hand on and read, especially when it comes to Situations such as, and let's go there. Let's go there. We have enough to deal with in our world today. I think Ms. Jennifer mentioned that in her earlier comments. And we find ourselves wrestling against stuff that I think we as Christians should stand up for. And are we doing that? It's my question. Many times my own parishioners at my local assembly. What are we doing? Why are we not standing for what God's word says about certain things? And the world continues to beat up on the situation. Why aren't we out there in the trenches? But we're too busy fighting among each other, as I just said about this situation when it comes to black church, white church, all that nonsense, that we can't even stand up for what's right and what God's word says about certain things. The unborn, the pro-life situation. We fall short because we're too busy doing other things. So certainly we not want to make sure, and then we get on this racial kick. And I tell folk, I'm part of the human race. Amen. God created me, I just have to be a darker hue. Now sometimes I get folk give me some language that I don't like to hear because I'm being of darker hue, but I understand they got the problem, I don't have it. Because I'm going to continue to serve my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. You got the problem, brother, sister. I don't have it. But we get involved with all that kind of stuff. Then we want to make sure we can keep this slave mentality of what we've been hearing about, enslavement of people look like me, and continue to be beat on in the school, teaching stuff. It keeps us separate, y'all. Yes, it happened. It's history. Let's move forward. Forget the past. Didn't what Paul said, didn't he? Forget those things that are behind, and let's push forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I can repeat the question if you'd like. Okay, good deal.
So I spend my life thinking about how to help kids grow up healthy. And there are so many wonderful books out there, the 16 that were on the list. It's unfortunate that we have had to spend as much time as we have spent on this issue, because there is so much that's wonderful that's out there. So, the decision, and I'm looking at my notes because I have the list of the 16 here. Some of the titles include Two Boys Kissing. They include my favorite, and I'm speaking sarcastically because I think this is maybe the worst, called It's Perfectly Normal. Now this one was the cartoon depictions of all kinds of things. And the thing that's interesting to me is that this one was cartoons that looked like it was maybe 4th grade appropriate. However, the content was radically inappropriate. And it is, in fact, was only in a high school, and I don't know that it had ever even been checked out. But look, here's the bottom line. Parents should not have to send their kids to my school to keep them protected. I teach in a private Christian school. And I am actually very, very encouraged with the solution that was come to, which is the opt-in, opt-out, where parents can make the decision if they want their kids to have access to this. I believe in parental choice. I wish that this kind of garbage was not accessible to kids, but that's the world we live in. However, it's not something that kids can get access to too easily. And so I think that the folks who worked extremely hard on this, along with the school board and the superintendent, came to a solution that I think we can live with. And I think that's a victory for those who worked so hard on this issue. I want to share one thing, and this is really my thought about these issues. Does anyone remember the Corrie ten Boom quote. You know Corrie ten Boom, who survived the Holocaust? She said this, she tells this story. And so seated next to my father in the train compartment, I suddenly asked, "Father, what is sex sin?" Okay, this is a long time ago. This is the word she used. He turned to look at me as he always did when answering a question, but to my surprise, he said nothing. At last, he stood up, lifted his traveling case off the floor and set it on the floor. "Will you carry it off the train, Corey?" he asked. I stood up and tugged at it. It was crammed with his watches and spare parts. "It's too heavy," I said. And this is the key part. "Yes," he said. And it would be a pretty poor father who would ask his little girl to carry such a load. It's the same way, Corey, with knowledge. Some knowledge is too heavy for children. When you are older and stronger, you can bear it. For now, you must trust me to carry it for you. This is the responsibility we have as those of us who are entrusted with the hearts of our children. We must be very, very wise. And I hope that the Polk County School Board will use this as an opportunity to rethink some choices and be very wise in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Everybody doing okay? You're getting some good answers, some good reads so far on some things. Wonderful, wonderful. Mrs. Kennedy, you made mention that you work at a private school. And so I want to bring up the matter of school choice. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey just recently signed into law the most expansive school choice legislation in the country, just under a month ago. Would you support school choice reform in Florida? I'm going to bring this to Philip Walker first. I think we know your answer. You probably give us a succinct one. But Mr. Walker.
Thank you. I do believe parents should have the right to put their child where they think they can succeed the best. Public, charter, private, homeschool. And I would say in the life of my former wife, who passed on earlier, and my wife now, and having to help me raise children after the loss of their mom, thank God for her. But I would certainly say we've had to meet each one of those, because each one of those children, our children I should say, even we come from in a blended family environment, we had to put the child where we knew he or she would be successful. I lost a former wife, as I just mentioned, we were in our early 40s. And after a bout with cancer, here I was, a widower with 2 young girls. Well, hey, look at me, I'm male, I don't think female. So I needed support. And I immediately knew where, hey, I got to put these young ladies somewhere they can go and be able to capture what needs to be captured academically, but also be able to be successful as a person, as a young lady growing up in society. So I chose to put them where I thought it would be best. I've had a daughter who graduated from Lakeland Christian. I have a daughter who's graduated from public school. I have a son who graduated from McKeel. And then my wife, of course, and with our son together, homeschooled, in some sense, him before he went to McKeel School of Technology, of course. So I've had that myriad of things I had to deal with. So it's, I think, a parent's responsibility. They know what's best for their child. I don't know. And whatever we can do to make that supportive here in our state, I think our governor's done a very good job to say, yes, it can be done. Do it. You know what's best for your child. I don't know. I can't tell you what's best in your own home. I know one thing, you're not coming to Philip's house and just think you're going to do what you can do in my house. So, and vice versa, I'm not going to your house, and I'm going to respect your home. It's your house. It ain't mine.
Ms. Kennedy.
I am a 20-year veteran educator. I have taught in public school, I have taught in private school, and I have also homeschooled. And I am a passionate advocate for choice. And I am also a passionate advocate for high-performing public schools, because I think that is an important part of education choice. I have had the privilege in my life of watching teachers pour themselves out for children in every different type of school environment. And I believe that one of the most significant things we can do to create that thriving I talked about earlier is to make sure that we hold our schools to high standards so that every child gets the kind of education that will allow them to thrive in life. And so oftentimes what that means is that we benefit from competition, from the competition that happens in an environment where people have a lot of choice and a lot of options. And so I think that is important. That's an important contributor to the thriving of families, but it really does have to include a strong, high-functioning public school option in addition to private and homeschool.
All right, if you don't mind, I'd like to, I suppose, get just a little political. You thought this was a political debate so far. All right, and then hopefully by 8 o'clock we'll go to public audience questions. All right, so a very large portion of U.S. citizens have lost trust in our elections. I would like for each of you to share your personal view of our recent past elections. Speak towards voter integrity, election integrity, transparency, and what you would do if you take this office in working with supervisors of elections offices in your district and even across the state to make sure that we have trusted elections in Florida. Mr. Philip Walker.
Well, I do believe Florida has proven to be a game changer. I say game changer because of our Governor DeSantis. We've done what we think is the best thing to make sure we protect the right to vote. Of course, you hear from other side that they believe that things are not the case, but I don't have a problem when I go vote. You know, I hear all the time among those that on the other side to say, well, you know, you have to prove this or you have to carry this. Well, you have to do that in most business situations wherever you go in our state. I go to the bank, even though they may say Mr. Walker, but I still got to say, hey, it's an account I want to get some money out of. You got to prove I'm Mr. Walker, right? So you do that, and I think it's not. I think it's a tool that can be used to make sure you're doing the right thing, and the person who needs to be voting is the person to be voting. That shouldn't have been said like that, but you understand where I'm coming from. So I think we've done very well here in our state under our governor to make sure that the right to vote. I think it's important to make sure, as you just mentioned, Reverend Pastor Friedt, that our supervisor elections offices need to make sure they have the proper tools and the funds that we need to make sure they have to get the word out, to make sure that things are done proper, so there will be no hindrances for those who would say they don't have that right or the right has been infringed upon. So let's do that. Let's make sure we use and utilize the supervisor elections offices throughout our state to do what they need to do to enhance, you know, voting rights, how to vote, where to go to vote, just so there won't be any questions about any of that at all. And again, I believe we have a very good model here in our state. It's been proven. So let's continue to make sure we work on that for all of us to be able to have the right to vote. I've never had a problem, and I'll go there again, because I don't mind saying it. As you look around, there's only two of us look like me in here, and we always hear among my culture, they got a problem. There's no problem. You just follow the directions. Do what you got to do. You do it everywhere else you go to conduct business, wherever you do, you just do it. And make sure the hindrance that you say you may have is not there.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Kennedy.
Drop boxes are a problem. And in the latest round of legislation that the governor just signed, we have gone a long way towards solving that problem. So the drop boxes now must be supervised. It's also a crime to hold more than 2 ballots outside of your family. So this idea that people can collect ballots and drop them off unsupervised, and who knows where they're coming from in the state of Florida, will no longer happen. Now, I am very concerned about the rest of the country. I think that Florida is very much on the right track and headed in the right direction. In terms of the things that I am concerned about voter rolls. I am concerned about making sure that those who are on the roll are the ones that are legally permitted to vote. And I don't know that our rolls are as clean and as tight as they ought to be, and I think that's an area where we could improve. When I talk to friends around the country, they are very excited that Florida is as bold as we are about election integrity. They look to us as a model. But I believe, like I said earlier, elections matter. But for a tiny fraction, we would have a very different perspective on how an election ought to be run. The most important thing is this, in my mind. We must have clarity. We must have confidence that every person is free to vote, every vote is counted properly, and that those who assume office are the ones who are legitimately elected. And without that confidence, we have eroded one of the most essential bedrock fabrics of our country. And so it is more important now than ever to be committed to being warriors for security of our election process.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And just to let both of you know, I've been monitoring time as we go here, and we're almost right on schedule, so we're good. But as far as the amount of seconds that each one of you have taken in answering, you're really close. You're within about 25 seconds of clock time. Now, somebody's going to check me on video on that, but I did the best I could. And so we're trying to run a fair forum here. I want to ask one question to each of you. We're going to get a little bit pointed and a little bit personal, so to speak, and then we're going to go to audience questions. So this is where the WWE music could be played, right here. All right. Mr. Walker, you have held public office for a period of time now, and I want to ask you, do you owe anybody any favors?
I don't play favors. I do believe, and my conscience will not allow me to do that. And as a born-again believer, I make sure that people know I do not play favors. I do what I think is right, what is just, what is, as I call it, to the point. I shoot from the hip, and I think people know that. Some, of course, because again, as I mentioned earlier, having an R behind my name they look like me. They have challenges, but I have challenges with those that don't look like me too, because they feel like I'm not good enough. So I don't play favors. I don't have the right to play favors. I do what's godly right. I pray. I trust God for what He would have me to do and say. As I deny myself, He increases me as I deny myself. How I pray and how I vote after I pray, I believe with what he would have me to do. So I have no favors. I have no one I owe anything to but God.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Are you ready? Jennifer Kennedy, does your husband's role as a high court judge impede your ability to carry this office if you are elected?
No. Does it impede my ability to carry the office? No, it does not. If it did, I would not have run. So the first thing that I did was to make sure that we felt confident that this was something that I could do and do well. Could there be a situation in which there could be some conflict? It's possible. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen. And if that's the case, then my husband would recuse, or I would not be engaged in an issue. So I think that the thing that you can be confident in about both me and my husband is that our integrity is more important to us than anything else. And our faithfulness, both of us, to serve with honor matters more than anything else. And so for those of you who don't, I'm seeing a few blank faces, so I'll explain. Okay. My husband serves on the Florida Supreme Court. He has served in that capacity since 2008. Prior to that, he served in a number of different roles in elected office. And I have watched over the last quarter of a century that we've been married, what it is to be married to a deeply honorable man. And it has been a joy and a privilege, and we will continue, he will continue as he's always done, to do the right thing.
All right, thank you very much. Well, you both survived the tough questions there at the end. And those were my personal questions, to be honest with you. And by the way, I like your socks. And they look good. You're not wearing any tonight.
No, but you can see my tan line.
All right. Well, we are at the point. Everybody okay? Would you like to stand and just stretch for just a moment and let the blood flow to your brain again? Is that all right? Yeah. You may take your coat off, sir. Yes. Not a problem. We are at that portion where we will take some questions from the audience. I do want to just set a little bit of ground rules. So far, we've had a friendly discussion, friendly forum, friendly debate. Ronald Reagan said one time concerning Republicans that it is basically, my words for what he said, it's pretty dumb for Republicans to attack other Republicans. We've seen what happens when 22 people of the same party get lined up on the stage and try to pick each other off. So we're not here to destroy anybody, but we are here to clear the air and to give you some information that you need in helping to make a right decision when you show up in the ballot booth on August the 23rd, if not sooner. So everybody stretched. You're well able to handle a little bit more. Go ahead and have a seat. And Mr. Jonathan here is going to run the microphone to whomever might have a question, and we'll just go one by one through the room until our time has expired to take this portion. I would suggest that you address your question to the candidate that you desire, unless it is an open question. And at that point, we'll just let the two of y'all paper, rock, scissors to see who goes first at it, okay? All right, any questions from the audience? Introduce yourself and then ask your question. By the way, these are questions. These are not preaching moments. I don't mean that specifically for you, Mr. Hatfield. Yes, he does.
Well, thank you, Pastor. You know, we have part of our culture that has been a squeaky wheel, and it's crept up and become more and more powerful, and more powerful, and crept in. And yet it's a small percentage of our population. How will you handle, when it's positioned in front of you, non-traditional family lifestyle decisions?
Paper, rock, scissors. Ready? Whoever wants to jump first.
Ladies first.
Ladies first, okay.
That's only
So-
because of where my mother raised me. She raised me to make sure ladies do first.
I believe that all people, and actually the Republican platform states that all people should be treated with dignity and respect. And so that I mentioned at the very beginning religious liberty. So treating all people with dignity and respect does not mean that we have to agree with lifestyle choices. We don't have to affirm lifestyle choices, but we can treat people as Jesus would treat them, which is grace and truth. And so how would I handle it when presented? Well, it depends on what the issue is, because it can come up, that's a very, very broad question, and it comes up in a lot of different contexts. But I believe that people of faith must have the ability to act as people of faith. And at the same time, we have a responsibility to treat people with dignity and respect. And so that's a balance that we must be unflinching in our commitment to truth, and also full of grace in how we address and deal with people.
I love the person. I may not love the sin. And maybe you may not agree with my answer, but that's the way I live and have lived my life. When it comes to lifestyle choices, even in my own family, there are situations that I do not agree with, but they're family. So I love them. I just don't love their choice that they may have made. And as a result, they know, where I stand, and would not waver because of what I know and in whom I believe. I was confronted as one of your local elected officials by a group, and I don't need to know the name, I won't give the name, but I'm sure you would know the name once I share the comment here. And I shared with them, no one should be bullied. No one should feel, that they've been mistreated. No one should have to go through that at all. But I cannot stand for what you're asking me to do because of my belief. I cannot. The Lord has been good to me. And my story may be a little different from everyone's story, but we all have our stories. But through my own trials, temptations, trials, and tests, He's been faithful. So I cannot waver, and I will not waver. Because I know it would not be the right thing for me in a moral thinking way to do. So yes, I have been ridiculed because I've took my stand and said, no, I can't agree to that. I will not vote for that. So if that's the question you're asking, sir, then you have the answer I just gave you. No, I would not be able to do just that.
Do we have another question in the audience? If you have a question while one question is being presented or answered, just go ahead and raise your hand up. Jonathan will spot you and he'll run over your direction so we can keep things moving briskly.
I actually have a question for Philip and a question for both of you. So I'm Jim Brown. I'm a real estate broker and a tech company owner locally. I've known you, Philip, for a long time from our Kiwanis days, Lakeland Kiwanis Club. But you said one thing earlier that kind of struck a chord with me. When you were talking about the women's organizations you worked with, you said a woman's choice. Is that one you've worked with?
That's the one that our church and I've had Well, I work with both of them in some sense. I've given funds to both of them and support both of them. But Woman's Choice is the one I know through my local ministry that we deal with more often, put it like that.
That answered that question. They provide abortion services, so I was a little concerned about that.
Well, let me
Woman's
clear.
Choice, no.
Yeah, a woman's choice,
is not, is an anti-abortion.
And we actually have Marilyn Paul here for options
for women. Yeah.
Their
So
website. So anyway, so we'll move on from that. We'll check that out in a little bit more. But
well, just for public record,
we need to make sure we get this clarified.
Go ahead. We'll allow you to clarify it since the question is addressed to you, Mr. Walker.
Yes,
Tell us who A Woman's Choice is.
Woman's Choice is essentially the same kind of organization as Options for Women. It's just two different organizations here in our city who are pro-life and do not, agree with abortions. So I don't know what website you may be looking at, sir, but.
I'm looking at your choice.
No, A Woman's Choice.
That's where it goes. So. Okay. Maybe we can take that offline and discuss that.
Okay.
Okay, you said you had another question as well?
The question was more for both of you. Okay, as a real estate broker, I receive calls every single day that my homeowner's insurance is being canceled because my roof is 10 years old. And homeowners in this region are facing some serious consequences from insurance companies for replacing roofs and things that they may not have the funds to do. So citizens, we're kind of stuck with citizens for, the unforeseeable future. What would you guys do? What have you thought about what you would do to try to rein that in some so that homeowners have some sort of way to fight back against what's going on?
We'll let Ms. Kennedy answer that first.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest issues facing the state of Florida right now. So we have just a tiny little bit of a reprieve here because the situation where we had 17 companies that were ready to be downgraded, actually I think it ended up being 20 in the end, would have been just a devastating blow to the industry. And we got a little reprieve from that downgrade. The biggest issue is fraud. The biggest issue is this sort of pattern of a storm comes through, a roofing company comes through, finds damage, and then the insurance company and the roofing company get into this problem related to assignment of benefits. So once benefits have been assigned, then you lose control as a homeowner. And this is a vicious, vicious cycle. The way out of it is reform related to this crazy perfect storm. The other issue that we have in the state of Florida is the reality that we have perfect storms that come through from time to time. And so this is always going to be challenging for us. It is exacerbated by the combination of fraud. We were dropped by our insurance company. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but we were dropped and had to go through the crisis of trying to get new homeowners insurance. And so I have experienced this personally, and it's only going to get worse. And the folks it impacts the most are those who are the least likely to be able to go out and get a new roof. And so this is something that deserves our full attention, and I think that's what will happen in this next session.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, and certainly because of my background with property and casualty insurance, I would tell you yes, it is a tsunami. Thankfully, because of the special session that happened some weeks back, there were some things that were done to help put a Band-Aid in some sense on what we need to have to be taken care of. but it will be something that would be a challenging conversation as we approach the next legislative session. And I hope to be there to discuss it because of some background and things I have knowledge of to be able to bring to the table to be supportive in what can happen to make it a win-win situation. I think we had four properties in the last few weeks that are non-renewed. And of course, citizens, the catch-all, is where we're having to go. And I continue to say, it should not be the insurance of no for everyone. That's not the case. It should be the situation that was intended to be if all else fails. But if you don't have companies who are leaving the state as they are, bailing up as they are, then that's where it has to be something. But what can we do? What can be done? That's your question. Well, I think it's time for us to sit at the table, and I'll call it have a come to Jesus meeting, and let's find out what can we do to be a support to this situation that we have here, the tsunami that we're faced with in Florida. Because it's not going away. It's not going away, but what can be done? So let's sit down and have this conversation and talk about rationale so we'll be able to get back to a marketable situation for our property rates, etc.
All right, question over to everyone's left.
Yes. My name is Guy. Pleasure knowing both of you. It's a pretty odd situation that we're dealing with just Republicans tonight. And I wanted to first say how wonderful you were both doing, because I cannot imagine being up there. Not a lot of fun. But what Jim was just asking, I wanted to see if I can kind of get both of you a shot to narrow it down, because I think what he we had the Band-Aid, as you just said recently, where we said, no, you cannot cancel insurances. You both mentioned a perfect storm, but we're seeing rates go up more than 1,000%. Jim Kennedy, you mentioned your homeowner's insurance was canceled. Same thing happened here. It was a lovely, wonderful time going through wind mitigations and little Rambo dances with more than one person. Quotes, lots of great companies here in Lakeland. But at the end of the day, you go from some coverage to no coverage, and then you're sort of bartering. Let's just be honest, you're praying to Jesus for a little grief, you know? So $24,000 later, a new roof, approximately 400% increase for square footage. The question is, you're going to represent us, one of you very qualified people are going to represent us in our district. What are you going to bring to the plate besides your own expertises? Is there anything that you guys have discussed amongst yourselves or your groups? How are you going to address that specifically? I know you have expertise, you have experience. What is the nugget? Because I think I'm not the only person that has that concern. It's not just insurance. It's a total economic platform that's going currently in this area. But roofing, we're up on this hurricane season, is something close.
I'm going to split his question, if you don't mind, and let you address the insurance increase, the rate increase alone, because in your closing comments, I'm going to ask you to indicate what separates you from your opposing candidate. Why should I vote for you or you as opposed to the other person? And so we'll separate that question, if it's all right, Mr. Guy. So in 60 seconds, what are you going to do about the increasing insurance rates, Mr. Walker?
And that's to be part of our closing as well?
No, I will ask you what separates you as a candidate.
Okay.
Why should I vote for you? Yeah.
To tell you, Mr. Guy, do I have an answer to tell you tonight? No, I do not, because I have not had the conversation to have with those I believe that we need to have a discussion with. Sure, I got ideas in my mind to say, okay, how can we make this a win-win situation? Because people are hurting because of what we've seen has happened. As is mentioned, in your case, Mr. Brown's case, my case, Ms. Canada's case, many others' cases, we've had those non-renewals to hit us. And we had to go find other insurance through the catch-all, Citizens of Property and Casualty. Well, where is the nugget? I don't have that answer right now, but I surely want to make sure I can work with someone who may have the same precious, background, professional background, that we can sit down and say, well, what is it? The fraud, as she mentioned, that has happened and occurred that could cause some uptick. Where is it? Let's make sure we can sit down and talk about it and have a discussion. No, I do not have the answer tonight.
The answer is fraud. The answer, in my view, is stopping the fraud. So, Florida has, and I'm going to, don't hold me to this statistic, but it's close, something like 81% of the lawsuits related to roofs. Fraud is a very significant problem, and that is the problem that needs to be addressed. Now, the real challenge is that that doesn't solve the problem immediately. So we have a situation here where you have had this happen over an extended period of time. You have had hurricane after hurricane, and you've got this system that has developed where, because of the way assignment of benefits has worked in the past, you've got a situation where it's not sustainable to remain in the state of Florida. That's the problem. So the problem is fraud, which means the solution is fraud. The solution is dealing with the fraud. And so that's the heart of what has to be done. And again, the issue is that it will not make the rates go down immediately overnight, but it is how we get to a better place.
Okay. Do we have any other questions in the audience before we move on? Other side of the room. And again, I want to ask you, while Mr. Jonathan is over there with that microphone, if someone else has a question, go ahead and raise your hand so we know who is on deck. Introduce yourself and then give your question over on the right side of the room.
Hi, my name is Stephanie, and I am currently an active writing property and casualty insurance agency. My family owns a business we have for 38 years, and we are in the tsunami right now. So it's not in defense of your insurance people. They are working diligently. I'm putting in many hours trying to help people. So in defense of my industry, just a little bit, listening to y'all talk about all your people walking around, but it is very infuriating, and I understand. One of my issues with the 2 sessions that they've gone into in 21, and then they went into another one, and then an emergency one, they have tried, and Governor DeSantis has done the same thing to control the attorneys. And the Governor DeSantis put something in where these, what I call fraudulent, very attacking roofers that are going through these neighborhoods in sweeps, particularly for the elderly. I'm seeing it, it's very sad. But we can't stop the restrictions on the litigators. So my question is where does, as a representative, where do we go to put some hiatus on these attorneys that are getting with these roofers and charging all these fees and stuff, when a lot of the people in the representation and the speaker and all that stuff are attorneys? So how could we combat that?
I think I will say again, as I share with Mr. Guy and of course Mr. Brown, John Brown there, that's where you got to, where the rubber meets the road, you got to be able to roll your sleeves up and say, okay, this is where the problem is, y'all. How can we stop this? And what should be done to help stop and prevent this? You got to do that, and I agree with you. It's not you or any other companies that work and try to make sure that they provide the best, policy or outcome for their customer. You're doing that. I know it was done by my agency. Well, that's my agency, not my personal agency, but the agency that I work through, to make sure they get me what they can give me at somewhat of a fair cost, as it would be. But certainly, if you see those kind of things happening, then you got to call a spade a spade. And let's tackle the problem.
Sometimes things have to get to a crisis point before people are willing to do the hard thing. And issues have to rise to a certain level in the general consensus. So I think we're there on this issue. I think that is what is different about our time. I think that you will see that there will be action on this in a way that there has not been in the past, in part because we are at this crisis point. So I think, we are at a point, I think, with this issue and some others as well, where, look, businesses have to make a profit. This is the purpose of business. I teach entrepreneurship, and I teach my students that it's their job as an entrepreneur to make money. That has to happen. But at the same time, people have to be treated fairly, and you have to be very clear about the service that you're providing. And the situation that we have here is that there is dishonesty and there are tricks. And that's what we have to deal with. And nobody wants that. And so we are at this moment, I think, when they're not going to get away with it anymore.
It is now 8:30. We're going to take one more audience question, and then we'll have our closing comments. Yeah, make it good.
Make it good. Yeah, my name is Orbis. I'm a member here at the Believers Fellowship. I'm also a missionary. And my question is for both of you. You both spoke on schools. Ms. Kennedy, you're a teacher. Pretty good political answers. But there's a problem with our children. We're losing a lot of good teachers, but our children come from broken homes, no fathers. My passion is children. So this is why the question. What are you going to do about those children that have no fathers, really, they haven't been shown respect for others? Society right now is really not doing a great or giving a great example for these children towards our law enforcement, teachers. So teachers have their hands handcuffed. What are you going to do to those teachers or for those teachers or the schools to help those children so they can have a better life? I mean, it's a broad question, but we need answers for that.
20 years ago, I started a preschool in a homeless shelter. So I started a preschool at Lighthouse Ministries because I am passionately committed to real change in the lives of people who are hurting. My own kids went to the preschool as well as the kids who lived at Lighthouse. And at the time, to my knowledge, it was the only magnet program where we had folks from the community coming in a homeless shelter in the country that we could find. And what we observed in that experience was that, there were kids, the children of teachers at McKeel, which was right there close to us. Teachers came in from all over to help us. And what we found was that kids who get a very high quality experience in early childhood are more successful in their lives. But I really believe that the answer doesn't lie with government. The answer lies with the heart of what it means to be a conservative. We're conservatives because we believe Not that government has all the answers, but that things like churches and community groups and schools, these ways that we're interconnected with one another, they really matter. And what you're talking about when you talk about children who don't have a father in the home and kids who grow up in these really difficult situations, what they lack is that interconnectedness. They lack love and mentoring from people that can help them learn what it is to have respect for those in authority, to have respect for teachers. I believe that the answer for teachers is to build stronger communities that will send them students who are more respectful and more prepared for their classrooms. That's not the easy answer, but that's the real answer over the long term. And what I would challenge each one of us to do in this room is to find a child to help. You don't have to help everybody. You can't help everybody, but you can build a relationship. So one of the neat things that's happened in my church, and I know it's happening in a lot of churches, is a commitment to fostering. So we have a lot of families in our church that foster, and you may not be in that situation where you can foster, but you can come alongside and get certified so that you can babysit and you can help and you can look for ways, because the real answer, not the easy answer, but the real answer is to build interconnected communities in ways that are meaningful. And we're going to have to get a lot better at that as a church. We're going to have to get a lot better at that as a community.
Mr. Walker.
Well, you're looking at someone that would be identified as being coming from a broken situation. My mother raised 6 of us without knowing, as I said, single parent, knowing my father, our father. It takes strong discipline situations in the house. The family structure has been eroded. And if the church, I'm not talking about this building, I'm talking about you all, the born, baptized believers in Christ Jesus. If we're not doing our part to make sure that we do that, to support the challenges, not only just for our children and that problem area in the family structure, but other things as well. About 30 years ago, I started a Men of Tomorrow program here in our city. Still thriving today. I do not work as closely because of other things on my plate. But we made sure we went out to, and I hate to use the word at risk. We're all at risk for something. But we reach out to those particular families or young, especially young, it was for young boys. And made sure that we brought them in and we taught them, we teach them. It still goes on. It's a 9-month program. As we do that, you have to apply. You can apply through your school, local school, to become a part of our Men Tomorrow program. But because that's where I was, and someone reached out and helped me. I was a teacher. Thank God, I've had 2 teachers that I was married to, my former wife and my wife who just retired here after 36 years of teaching, of being part of the education process. So it's going to take that. We got to do our part, you all. And because they don't look like you, they don't think like you. They're not having the same kind of situations to deal with you like you. But you got to understand from where they come from and what they're dealing with. And I think it's important to know that because, again, it's going to take us each one reaching one. Wherever you can go, whatever school you want to partner with, become a volunteer to support a child's situation, just do that. It'll make a difference in someone's life, and I'm sure you all are doing that because you raised the question. But if I'm not mistaken, there is a program to help young men that I believe is about to begin in our legislature, during our legislature coming up here next session, if I'm not mistaken, for my reading and hearing what's supposed to be. And I plan to be just there with that because I'm a product again. And just because you come out of a bad situation, or born in a bad situation, I should say, does not mean you're at the end there. Look at Philip Walker. It's called choice, though, because you can reach out to them. You can help, provide the resources and support for them, but they got to make the choice as well to want to do better.
All right. Let's close this thing down. What do y'all say? 3 minutes from each of you. By the way, most of your answers probably averaged around 3 minutes for every question that was asked. So we've had a lot of 3-minute stuff today. So 3 more minutes, just one more time, and then we'll be done. We started with Mr. Philip Walker opening and introducing himself. So we will end with Mrs. Kennedy closing and telling us what separates you as a candidate. Why should I vote for Jennifer Kennedy?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. And thank you to each of you for choosing to spend time with us. We get the government we deserve because of our level of participation, and you being here with us indicates your commitment to that, so thank you. My background is different. I have spent the last 25 years of my life in the classroom, in the community, working hard, and I am passionately committed to providing our district with excellent representation in Tallahassee. It is about the way I will build relationships with other members, with the executive, and it is about the level of effectiveness that I will have. So just to share, these are some of the folks who have endorsed my campaign. There's a long process of interviews, of surveys, a lot of writing, and a very rigorous process. So I am very grateful to be endorsed by Business Voice, which is the Lakeland Chamber, Associated Industries of Florida, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Independent Businesses, which is the small business folks, the Florida Association of Realtors, Associated Builders and Contractors, the Polk Builders Association, the Florida Medical Association, the Florida Family Policy Council, which is John Stemberger, Sheriff Grady Judd, the Police Benevolent Association, the Florida Professional Firefighters, and the Lakeland Professional Firefighters. I have been vetted, I have been through a rigorous process, and I am very grateful that those broad industry groups and organizations have chosen to support me. And that wouldn't mean a whole lot if it were not for this reality. I want to be a representative for our entire community, from the teachers to the police officers to the firefighters to those of us who spend our lives in ministry. It is very important to me to be passionately committed to excellence, and that is what I will bring to Tallahassee. I ask for your vote for Jennifer Kennedy on August 23rd or before. And thank you again for your presence with us tonight.
What separates you as a candidate, sir? Why should I vote for Philip Walker?
As I sit here tonight, as I give thought to, why I did what I've done thus far, and thank you again for you all that's here and those that may be listening if it's already being broadcast. Thank you for listening as well and being a part of this particular forum tonight. Well, I started out, in this particular, I call being a public servant. Some folks say politician. I don't use that term very much. I indicate I'm a public servant. I've been in the trenches. I've been in the ditches. When there were problems and needed support here in our city and throughout our I'll call our city in this area. I was there to make sure, things were done. We had some problems here about a few years back when we had the gang violence here in our city. Well, I was the one that helped support and be able to start the gang task force. We had over 30 shootings of young people. About 12, 13 were murdered. We had to get our fingers on the pulse for that particular situation. Well, I did that. I'm a doer. I make sure I get things done. Even the thing that just recently happened with our city, in our city just just 3 or 4 years back. No, a couple of years back now, because during COVID, with the George Floyd situation. And when they were trying to bring that travesty situation to our city about racial, disparity and all those kind of things. Well, I was the one that called the meeting, and we had folk to come together and let's talk about racial disparity and what problems we may have here in our city that need to be addressed. So I am the doer. I'm the one that did those things. So I would tell you, in my 13 years and the experience that I have gained, the service I have given, should be a track record, I think, hey, I've been there, done that. And I will ask that you consider that as well, because of what things have happened and what things I've done to support to make Lakeland a harmonious place for all of us to live, work, and play. That's what I've done. That's what I will continue to do as I move on to Tallahassee, to make sure that we're all in this game together, playing this sand together, as we should do, and not present the separation that we see so much of that can be a problem for all of us. So I ask for your vote. I would like to have your vote. And I've gotten several individual endorsements, name some. Visit my website, votephilipwalker.com, and you'll see those. So I implore you to think about that. Think about the one who's had the experience and one who's been there and done that, who've called the people together and rallied them up to make sure that we get things accomplished here in our city, and I would do the same thing for House Seat District 50. And I thank you again and ask for your vote.
Well, thank you both very much for being here. Thank you guys all for being here. We've had a wonderful debate. Thank you very much. I've got some wonderful things, some wonderful notes from myself, some things to think about, and I hope you have gotten some good answers today as well. I would say this as a pastor. I don't think we would have much issue with that with this crowd, but if you can't vote your biblical values, you need to do a checkup on the inside. So I want to go down the line, but we've already expired some time. Brother Ed, is there anything else that you want to say? And we'll close this thing down. Can you give one more hand to the candidates as they leave the stage area? Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for spending your evening with us this evening. I want to thank everyone that took time from their busy schedules to come this evening and spend time. And keep this in mind. Our Rotary Club of Lakeland Sunrise adopted a theme this year. The theme is Imagine, United We Heal. And I believe in that so much that we need to come together. We need to vote our values at the polls. August the 23rd is a very crucial date, folks. We cannot ignore the fact of a primary. They're just as important as a general election. And this year, much more important because state seat 50 will be decided on August 23rd. School board races will be decided on August 23rd. We need to get on the phone. We need to talk to our friends, family members, encourage them to get out and vote August 23rd. That's the general election for quite a bit of races this year in Polk County. So again, thank you very much. Paul Hadfield's got some shirts back in the back for our faith-based Republican Club of West Polk. The money goes right into our funds, helps us put on events and so forth. We'd appreciate that. And God bless each and every one of you. Be safe on your travels tonight. And talk to our candidates, get pictures taken, and socialize. Have fellowship. Thank you very much.